Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? I hope you are doing very well. This video is going to get kicked off right away because it's time to do my QA and my Q&A video, and there are a lot of questions. I have a lot of talking to do, and I'm going to try to talk really fast. I want to thank everyone that supplied a question. I really did try to pick out everyone's questions and organize them. I have them in 4 sections: about me personally, about books and myself, about books in general, and then about Booktube. There are a lot, so this video may go a little bit long, so I already apologize in advance. I'm going to try to give everyone credit for all of the questions that they asked. And really thank you guys so much for even, taking the time to ask the questions. Hopefully I'll get you guys some very good answers. So let's start with the personal questions, and my favorite question actually from Jennifer Posapech. Sorry, Jennifer. She wants to know how my grandma is. My grandmother is fantastic. She is 90. She still lives by herself. She does have to use her walker every day, and she does not like it. She definitely is an independent woman, but she is doing very well. All of her surgeries seem to have taken. She's doing well with her weight. She'll be 91 in October, and so I'll definitely be seeing her very soon for that. And we talk probably once a month, if not more often than that. So she is great. Thank you for asking. Question number 2 comes from Getting Higgy With It and Eli Berry. Both wanted to know, when did you know your husband was the one, or what was the love story between the husband and I? Actually, funny enough, I met Dan as I was going through my divorce of a relationship that was 13 years long. And when we met, he had just moved to California, and I was not clearly looking for a new relationship. I was going through an ugly divorce. So we met, we were going to be friends, we were just going to sort of hang out, and then it just clicked. And for some reason, we just knew that we could get along. We don't really argue, and we don't really have fights. We get on each other's nerves, don't get me wrong, but we definitely have found that we were just a good fit. And one day we were like, this is kind of working. Do you want to see if it will work a little bit longer? And we just hit 5 years. We will be married for 3 years in October. It's pretty good. It just was a weird timing, but it worked out absolutely perfectly. He is one of those very loyal people who will go to bat for just about anyone he cares about. I'm a mama bear, so we work really well together with all of our kids, which goes into the next question from Kendra Winchester and Snake Plinsky. I adore Kendra, adore her channel. And she wants to know about my fur babies. I do, if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, you will get lots of pictures of my kids. And she mentions that, what are their names and what are their adoption stories. So the first pet I had was Sophie. She was a cat. She passed away last year in January. I picked her up. I adopted her. She was about 6 weeks old. She had actually been thrown out of a car window on the freeway in San Diego and was injured, and the people who found her could not afford to take care of her, so I took her. I had her for 19 years. She passed away at just over 19 years old. So she will always be the most special animal I've ever had. Baxter is our oldest boxer. He has been with my husband since he was about 6 weeks or 6 months old, and they are best friends, and they can't be without each other, and it's the cutest relationship. Baxter is a big baby, and I love him to death, and tons of pictures on Instagram if you're interested. The next oldest, well, he's older, but London is my other cat. He is black and white. Funny story about London was my secretary. I used to run an office for my company down south, and I had a secretary whose sister had London, and her other cat did not like London, so she was going to put London to sleep. London was about 1.5, 2 years old. Turns out kittens are a lot of work. I was not going to let that happen, so I adopted London, and I've now had him for 14 years. He'll be 16, I think, in around November. So, and he's great. And then we adopted Blanche. So when we met Blanche, she was in a adoption fair on the side of a building. We went to the bookstore actually, and we're walking back to our car. She was the only dog that wasn't being talked to, so we brought her out. We were like, oh, we'll just play with her for a minute. And basically they told us she was the only dog that hadn't been taken out all day. And they let us borrow her for 4 hours and see if we wanted to adopt her. We brought her home, and turns out she did not get along well, so we were not going to adopt her. And we took her back with the intention of not adopting her. And they were going to put her to sleep the next day because no one had looked at her, and she had been up for adoption for 6 months. So 3 years later, Blanche has been a member of our family, and we couldn't imagine it. She is the best little dog in the world. I know I'm biased, but she's fantastic, and we love her to death. Berkeley is from an amazing boxer rescue here in California, Nevada, and Oregon called West Coast Boxer Rescue. We went actually to meet another boxer, but we're told that he wasn't good with other dogs. So we met Berkeley, who was named Toblerone at the time. Berkeley was mentally and physically abused when we got him, and about 30 pounds underweight. And he is a handful. He is definitely our problem child. He has separation anxiety. He hyperventilates. He chews things up when he thinks he's being left, and he thinks he's being left all the time. But he is our baby, and we love him, and he is definitely part of the family now. And yeah, so those are our fur baby. Oh, Dorothy. I always forget Dorothy. Dorothy is our newest little kitten. You don't see a lot of pictures of Dorothy because she's not really that big on being out and about. She's still learning what it's like to be part of our household. We adopted her from the Humane Society. We got her when she was about 2 months old, and we've had her a little over a year now. And she's a handful. She doesn't like me very much because I do the bathing and the nail clipping and the hair brushing. So her and I are still learning each other a little bit. So there you go. Those are our fur babies. Susan Lay asks, what's my favorite food, what's my favorite movie, and what's my favorite music? My favorite food, hands down, sushi. Love it. Favorite movie, I'm not a huge movie person. I don't like to watch movies more than once, but I do have a guilty pleasure movie I watch when I'm sick, which is Miss Congeniality with Sandra Bullock. I don't know why. It makes me laugh. I love it. I never eat a donut without thinking about that movie. Favorite music? Music to me is very particular to two things. I love women who can sing. So women with unique, amazing voices. I'm a huge fan of Audra McDonald, a lot of Broadway women. When I was growing up, I was obsessed with Reba McEntire. I was certain when I was 6 years old I was going to marry Reba McEntire, and I will always love her for the rest of my life. We listen to a lot of rap. I like, the other point is I really like lyrics that mean something or have something to say. So a lot of rap music, a lot of singer-songwriter type stuff. Yeah, so that's what I like. I don't turn a ton of music on. If I'm going to turn something on, I usually turn on a podcast or a audiobook, but I do have some stuff. I have a couple playlists that I'll put on if I'm, just need to sing my little heart out. So there you go. Let's see. So Eli Beth Colarusso and Larissa Suris, so Eli Berry, asks about my tattoos, okay? So I have basically both sleeves, and I'm in the process of getting my back done. My back is sort of like this avant-garde, Dali-esque version of a library with a reader falling apart around him, and it has all the animals from my sleeves incorporated. Unfortunately, it goes down past my rear end, and I cannot show that, well, actually to anybody. So it's only for me. My sleeves are, you can see I have a giant octopus here, and I have a turtle here. When I was younger, I used to be very multitasky. I'm still very multitasky, but people used to say I was like an octopus, so there's where that came from. Turtles are my favorite animal. I was scuba diving in Aruba, and I was swimming back. I wasn't feeling well, and I went under the water, and there was a sea turtle, and it swam with me probably for like 30 minutes. So whenever I need serenity, I think about that moment. This sleeve has an owl, has actually a couple owls on it, and some books, and it has a clock or a watch. Can I show you? Yeah, you can kind of see it right there. It's a very reader sort of friendly thing. There's a big snake that goes around. That was my artist's audition, a very Adam and Eve, Tree of Knowledge kind of thing. My artist is Matthew Shama, San Jose, Analog Tattoo. He's fantastic. He draws everything. Just give him the ideas and we work through it together. What do you do for work? This was the most popular question. Britta, hi. Christopher Barry, Hi, Chris. Morgan Caruth, Snake Plinsky, Curious Cardinino 2012, and Susan Lay all asked me this question. So, what do I do for a living? I work for a major car insurance company and the injury claims division. I've done everything from fatalities to litigation for the company, and currently I am a manager of a team that handles injury claims for the state of California. So, there you go. Have you ever lived or traveled somewhere else? How would you compare the experience of being gay in the SF Bay area to other places? Where I live is not bad, but I'm getting tired of some attitudes and such, and would love to move to a place where I can just relax. And this is again from Snake Plinsky. So I grew up in San Diego, and then I moved to the desert area, the Palm Springs area of California, and then I've lived in the Bay. I've only lived in California, so I am very blessed in that regard. But I have traveled extensively. I've been to Barcelona, to Athens, to Washington, D.C., lots of times in Oregon. That's where my family currently lives. I've been through the Midwest. So I've traveled a lot. I'm very lucky. I am really aware of how lucky I am to be in California and the climate in which I work in. My husband and I can go anywhere and be my husband and I, and we're very blessed. We've had experiences in other states where we haven't been so well received, but I'm more of the mindset of that's their problem, not my problem. So we try very hard to just be who we are. But, excuse me, I have been in a couple of situations that have been rather nerve-wracking. But I would say if you can afford to live in California, and I know it's very, very expensive, it is an amazing place to be who you want to be, whatever that may be. A lot of California is very open, and I know I'm very, very blessed to live here. Claire asks, what's the story at the turtle behind you? So, Mr. Turtle back here. Okay. There is no story. So when my husband put together this space, I came home and the turtle and the rainbow were two parts of it. I think someone asks about the rainbow too, actually. Yeah, no, my husband just added them. Turtles are my favorite animal. And my husband really likes rainbows and things like that. So and the rainbow always falls on my head. But they're just very much with the aesthetic of how we wanted this reading space. So, yeah. And then, yeah, Sean the Book Maniac actually is the one who asked me about the rainbow. So a lot of the stuff that are on my shelves are all bought for me by my husband. He looks at things and just thinks they belong in my world. So I'm very lucky in that regard. And someone asked about this one. And this is actually, it's hard to see because of the background, but this is a giraffe that is actually by an artist that did it all from one piece of wire. And he was an artist that my husband ran into in San Diego and bought me that piece. So, yeah, I love it. Love it. Giraffes are my second favorite animal. So there you go. Where and how do you curate all those great fun shirts? Kara McNulty asks me. I look for shirts online all the time. Most of my shirts come from gay-owned companies. I try really hard to support gay clothing lines. Cyberfuge does a bunch of my clothing. They are a gay-owned company out of New York. And funny enough, the guy who owns that is actually also one of the employees at the Book of the Month Club. So I support him twice and really enjoy that. I just go on and search. This shirt that I'm wearing and my Resist shirts are all from a company called Project X, which is they've got a very Hawaiian feel to them. And they're online and on Instagram, and they are fantastic. I just really search for things, and a lot of things are bought for me because people know I like fun t-shirts. So I'm super lucky for that. What was your favorite class in college and why? Now, one asks this. I'm assuming it's one, but if it has a different pronunciation, I apologize. My favorite class in college was very perfunctory to me. I worked full-time and only took classes at night. And so I went to school with the intention of getting my degree. I did graduate with a degree in literature. I thought I would always be a high school teacher. And just financially, that wasn't going to work for me. But my favorite class actually was something I took my junior year, and it was actually Anthropology 101. And the reason was, if I had taken that as a freshman, I would be an anthropologist. The teacher was fantastic. The text was fantastic. The learning was fantastic. And it made me realize there was a whole side of myself that I didn't really know. And yeah, so that's the class that I remember most fondly because of its challenges to me, and that I think that my life would be very different if I had taken that class earlier in my college career. I'm just letting you guys know this video is going to be long. I haven't even gotten through the first page of questions yet. What are some books you've reread, and how do you feel thoughts about them change the second and third time? And that's Eric, the Lonesome Reader. Eric needs no introduction. I don't reread. I've reread for college, but I will not reread on purpose unless it's for a book club or a college class. So I can't really answer that question because I wouldn't do it. I just feel there are too many books in the world to reread, and I don't do it. Eric also asks, was there a friend or a teacher who inspired your love of reading? My grandmother is the person first and foremost. She is a huge reader. I've talked about this before. She has these little black books where she writes down all of the books that she's read for years and years and years. But in high school, I had 4 or 5 amazing English teachers. John Rice, my freshman year. Arlene Gruber, my sophomore year. Christine Edwards, my junior year. Gloria Lewis, my senior year. Louise Shappy was not my teacher, but she was a major influence on me. And Janice Gabay, who was the California Teacher of the Year one year and was all 5 or 6 of them, I lost count, formed me into the reader and the analyzer of literature that I turned out to be. And I am ever thankful for them. I am friends with a number of them on Facebook still to this day. Miss Shappy actually commented on my 1-year anniversary video, and it makes me so happy. They don't know maybe as much influence as they have, but I will often sit down and read a book and think, this is how Miss Lewis would look at this, or Miss Edwards, or high school English teachers. Let me see. Extra Delete asks, have you ever written a book? A couple of people asked me this, and I apologize. I have not. I have tried. I thought I would be a writer at one time, but every time I try to write a book, it always starts with trees in the wind, and it never goes anywhere. So no, I am not a writer by chance, because I just am not that good, but I will gladly support other writers. James Holder asked me, what is your personal library like? It is in flux, James. I need to figure out what to do with all the books I've read and I've tried to keep. I don't have enough space, but my books are separated into TBR, books I've read, and then in this room right now are books signed up here, and then my favorite collections and authors are over here. Everything is alphabetized by author, and then if it's sort of by a bunch of authors, I try to put them in the order that they were published, but I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my library as we speak. Someone asks me, and this kind of fits into the book section or books about me section, so we'll sort of start there. Are you at all interested in reading Victorian novels or other 19th century literature, possibly participating in Victober with some other booktubers, or is this not your cup of tea? Asks Cardino 2012. Or is it 21012? Sorry if I mistyped your name, Cardino. Part of my major in college was Victorian Lit. So I have read, and Charles Dickens was my favorite author for a very long time. So I've read Pamela, and I've read Clarissa. I've read all of the sort of Bronte stuff and Jane Austen and all that kind of stuff. I feel like I'm done with that as far as reading it now, unless it's a new author putting stuff in the Victorian time period. I don't read a ton of it anymore, mainly because I read a lot of it in college. I am awful at Victober and stuff like that because I'm not good at sticking to a TBR. I always have the best of intentions, but if I don't want to read a book, I just don't read it. So I don't participate in those readathons very often, though I wish I did. There you go. Susan asks me, 4 authors, either living or deceased, that you would want to dine with. I would say Toni Morrison is absolute, hands down, the woman that I would want to, Toni Morrison. blows my mind. Barbara Pym is probably my favorite good feeling author, so I would definitely want her. Jesmyn Ward, I've met her once, but I would love to watch her and Toni Morrison just talk forever. Forever. And then the fourth one, I'm going to go with David Mitchell just because I love sort of his brain and how he works. But there could be a lot of people in that. But David Mitchell, I've seen him live once and he is entertaining. And I love a lot of his novels. So there are your four. I want to know about books that you see yourself in or books that you would choose to represent who you are as a person, asks Read and Find Out. I don't know that I've ever really thought about books where I see myself, so I don't know if I have a good answer to that. But books that are quiet in nature, I don't need a lot of plot. I'm more character driven, and I'm also more about the language. So I always say, if you want to know who I am as a reader, read my favorite book, and that's Stoner by John Williams. And if you want to know who I am as a reader when it comes to how I think about great literature, read Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. Those are the two books I think that encompass who I am the most as a reader and how I think about literature. Okay, what are some of your bookish pet peeves? I have two that I'm going to tell you about because this list could go on. I still don't understand why people dog ear books. Drives me insane. So that's probably my biggest one. My other pet peeve is people who have an opinion about a book but only read like the first 10 or 15 pages. I often have conversations with people where they say, oh, I hated that book. And I'm like, oh, you read the whole thing? And they're like, oh, no, I read the first 10 pages and it just was awful. And I'm like, can't really judge an entire book by 10 pages. So for me, it's really important if you're going to have an opinion on a book, you need to read at least half or more of it. And it's hard to say that a book is awful if you haven't finished it because it may turn, it may have all this stuff that could happen. And so, yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine. I try really hard. I don't DNF very often. And if I do DNF, I really have a good reason. And I try to tell you this is just me personally. Have you ever thought of written a book? We also talked about this. Cami Castellan, one asked me this. If you did, what would it be about? And I'm guessing no world building and possibly about a sassy elderly woman. Well, clearly it would have an elderly woman in it, right? But no, I don't. I thought about it years and years ago, so it doesn't pass my stuff anymore. Dominique F. asks me, if you were an author, which book from your favorites that would represent the kind of author you would like to be? This is a much easier question because I've already answered it. Song of Solomon is the epitome to me of what I would want to be the writer. I think it's pretty much perfect, as well as Stoner. I think they're both pretty much perfect books. And if I were a writer, I would want to write those two novels. Lost in Kudsa asks, what was your most hated assignment reading for school, and what do you that you think you might like if you reread it as an adult? I actually have an answer to this question. I hate Ernest Hemingway. I really do. I'm not a Hemingway fan. I know a lot of people are. It's just not for me. But I will say I read The Sun Also Rises in high school and did not like it. I liked it much better as an adult. I saw more in it. So yeah. So this video is getting even longer and I'm not even halfway done. When did you first see yourself in a book, a character trait, or a type of person you strongly identified with? Eric Carlson asks me. My grandmother gave me a series of books called The Boxcar Children when I was younger, and it was about kids and an adventure. And I don't remember much about the books, but I remember how they made me feel about escaping into a book to get away from life as it was. So I will say that's probably the first time I thought about that. Melody Steinbaugh asks, what was some of your favorite books from childhood? I think childhood books are a fascinating map to our adult selves. Boxcar Children. I was a huge fantasy reader when I was in middle school, so anything Dragonlance, anything by Mercedes Lackey. I read all of Stephen King, so all of that. I read a lot of classics, so like Tarzan, Little Women, all that kind of stuff really formulated me into the reader that I am going to be and am. There you go. What is the genre you would like to explore more in the near future? Alexei M. asks me. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I try. I try to go outside my thing. I try to read more fantasy. I try to read some mystery. And it never works out the way I want it to, so I don't have a great answer to that. But my answer really is to be more open-minded. I read a lot of really different stuff just to try it. And that works, right? These questions are all about books. Okay. I wonder if you read one book at a time or if you have several ongoing at the same time. What about audiobooks, like or not like? Tabitha Carlson asks me. One book at a time. You guys know this about me. Though I will do one book and one audiobook at the same time. I am an audiobook. I travel a lot for work, so I listen to an audiobook all the time when I am on the road. And yeah, so there you go. What is the first book you remember Macaro 84? I actually have it, and I wish I had pulled it for you guys, but the first book I remember is a copy of a Reader Digest copy of Little Women, which I have that belonged to my aunt. It was given to her for her birthday in like 1964 or something, and my grandmother gave it to me, and I still have it on my bookshelf, and that's the earliest book that I can remember wanting to keep, and I have it still, and I'm 40, soon to be 41. What is your most treasured book? I think I just answered that. Either because it's a beautiful or rare or old edition, or for sentimental reason. This is Snake Plissken again. Pliskin again. I also have a copy of the OED that I bought, a dual copy of the English Oxford Dictionary, which I got at a book sale, and it is an old edition, and I love it, and it sits actually in my red room, and I love it, and I will never, ever get it wrong. And I am a super fan. So last year, Simon of Savage Reed sent me a copy of the Essex Serpent, sorry. And it is gold on the edge. It is gorgeous. And then my friend Steve got me a copy of the paperback that has blue edges. And so I have both of them, and they're beautiful, and I love them. Love them! Do you keep all the books you buy receive? How do you decide what stays and what goes? Kate Green asks. I keep them, and this is a problem. It's a problem. I do have some books. If I don't like a book, or don't finish a book, or DNF it very soon, I keep a bag that I take to my local independent bookstore. Actually, it's a used bookstore, and they trade them in, and then I just buy more stuff. I keep almost everything, and that is problematic when you are running out of space. But I do need to call, and I'm trying to decide how I'm going to do that. If you have advice, down below, I need it. Okay, what is your favorite queer novels to recommend? Don Levy asks me. This was actually hard for me because most books that are, I couldn't think of a lot where I would say, oh, this is a queer novel. But I will say I have a couple that I really do recommend. If you are looking for a phenomenal middle grade book, George by Alex Gino is about a transgender little girl that will break your heart and open your heart. It's fantastic. I love Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin. I can't remember his last name, but the audiobook is done by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and it is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Christadora by Tim Murphy that was out a couple years ago. One of my favorite books of a couple years ago. And I think that is what I can come up with off the top of my head. Actually, I gotta figure out what the name of that book is. I'll get back to you. What's the oldest book you own? Do you have a book you hate? Anna Babbling Book asks me. The oldest book I own would have to be my copy of the Oxford English Dictionary, and that copy of Little Women that I have that was published before 1964. Do you have a book you hate? I don't hate any book, but I will say the only 1-star review I've ever given was to 50 Shades of Grey. And the reason I had was because the writing was so horrible, and I felt like she used a thesaurus and picked words that she didn't know what they meant and put them in sentences, and they did not make sense, and it made me very angry. I appreciate what the book did. I appreciate tons of people bought it. I appreciate it got to a demographic, but it was not a very well-written book. What are 3 books you would recommend, and what book would you never recommend? Coco Swan asks me. Think you got the answer to the last question. 3 books I would recommend. I highly recommend Homegoing by Yagasi came out a couple years ago. I think that if you are into debut authors, it is freaking fantastic. I highly recommend The Orchard Keeper by Cormac McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy is probably my second or third favorite American novelist. I adore him. And actually, maybe Blood Meridian by him. Blood Meridian. It's really hard to pick a Cormac McCarthy novel. And I would probably say The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Yeah, that book breaks my heart. Yeah, I love it. Do you have... who are your favorite fictional parents, parental figures in books? I think parent figures are so badly represented in books, so it's great to hear about brilliant ones that are done well, asks Jasmine Reeds. So, I don't really, I tried to think about this, but it was very, very hard. But I love the mother in, This is How I Leave You, This is the Way I Leave You by Trope. Is that his name? And she's fantastic. But I couldn't really think of a lot of parents in books because I read a lot of dark stuff. And as you know, in dark stuff, the parents very rarely are the stars of the show. But if you haven't read Sing 'Em Buried Sing by Jesmyn Ward, the grandparents in that book are phenomenal. And grandparents are important. Do you have any awkward author encounter stories, asks Sean the Book Maniac. I don't have anything awkward, but I will tell you a funny story that just happened on Friday. I went on Friday to see Tiare Jones' American Marriage, and I was in line behind Margaret Sexton. Oh, she has 3 names. I'm blanking on her name. But her book was just nominated for the National Book Award. And I was behind her the whole entire time and did not realize until I got home and got on Twitter that she was standing in front of me and I didn't say anything. I was so mad at myself. She was nominated for a National Book Award and she was 2 feet in front of me. Oh, so frustrating. Which of your favorite books have you read the most number of times and why? Asked Sean the Book Maniac. Answer is none. I've only read my favorite books one time. I only want to read them one time because I'm super afraid if I read them again, they won't hold up. So I don't reread for that exact same reason, especially if it's a book I love. Yeah, so I've mentioned a couple here. Stoner. I've mentioned Song of Solomon. I will mention Remains of the Day as a book that I will never reread, but is one of my favorites that I think about constantly. Excellent Women by Barbara Pym. Adore that book. So all those, I would never reread them, but I love them. I've heard you say you don't read much fantasy. Why do you think that is? Asks Melody Steinbaugh. I like urban fantasy. I like China Melville. I like Neil Gaiman. I like stuff like that. I don't like epic fantasy because I get bored with world building and I get lost in those sort of the historic details. And it's just not for me. So that's why I don't read a lot of epic fantasy. But I have read a lot of fantasy. I've read The Magicians by Lee Grossman. I've read almost all of Neil Gaiman. I've read a lot of China Melville. So that kind of stuff really plays to me, but it's my world with the fantasy element into it where I don't have to go through the world building, which is the part that I have the hardest time with. So some Booktube questions and then we're done at 30 some odd minutes. Do you have any advice for new Booktubers on growing their channel? Asks Anna Babbling Book. You know what? Here's the thing. Put out content, put it out consistently, and become part of the community. Talk on other people's channels, reach out to people on Twitter, reach to people on Instagram, have conversations, create friendships. That creates the world. Watch people's videos and comment early and talk to them about their content. Be positive and have good conversations and people will find you. Be patient. Patience, patience, patience. Because I think a lot of people think you put stuff up and it can go really fast and it doesn't. It takes forever to get to 100 subscribers and 500 subscribers. And, it just takes time, but do it for you. Do it for the content and do it for the friendships. Don't do it for the growth. Hopefully that helps. I'd also like to know if hosting a booktube channel means you sometimes feel obligated pressure to maintain a certain volume of books read, asked Jennifer Payne. It did. When I first started, I always felt like I had to be reading because I wouldn't have enough to talk about. And then Simon, who is my fairy booktube mother, fairy godmother of booktube, if you will, told me that that was the absolute wrong reason to be reading, and he was absolutely right. So I don't pressure myself. I do feel like it keeps me honest with making sure I am reading stuff and mixing up my reading, backlist stuff and new stuff, so I have good stuff to talk about, but I don't feel obligated. I haven't read a book for a few days. I read a book that really made me angry. And so I needed a break, and I don't feel bad for that. Because this is really, I mean, again, it's a hobby, and no one pays me to do this, so this should never feel like something that's putting me out, right? Okay, so what are some of your favorite BookTube-related memories, and how do you think BookTube has changed your reading habits, asks the May Cave. Memories are just really the friendships. You guys, I have met so many people. Chris from Chris's Bookish Cauldron and I text each other pretty much every day talking about books and movies and stuff. Richard of Richard Reads, Simon, Jen and Mercedes, who I would never have met, have been fantastically supportive, wonderful sweethearts. Lauren of Lauren and the Books, Lauren of Lauren and Daydreams, Jean of... well, Jean's channel, just Jean. I just look at her and I go, it's Jean. So there are so many people. It's introduced me to Joss of Squibbles Reads and Emily of Possibly Literate, and that friendship, Sean the Book Maniac and I go back and forth. I talk to Twitter people. Renee is a guy from Australia who just started his own channel, and him and I have been chatting, and it's just been, that is what I love more than anything about BookTube. And then also I'm super excited that it's gotten me into meet a ton of authors, from Jesse Chaffee to, I just saw T.R.E. Jones. I mean, guys, it's really been a blessing, and I cannot in any way complain about any part of it because it's just been fantastic. The last question is, did you find your reading has changed much since your BookTube channel? And that's Melody Steinbach. I will say yes, and I will tell you why. Because the good thing that BookTube has done for me is given me, I'm a very regulated person in my life. I like structure. So knowing that I have to put up content just keeps me reading, and it keeps me looking and at new stuff and watching other people's videos and learning about books and learning how to do stuff differently. I watch people like Kendra Winchester and think, someday I will talk about books as brilliantly as she does. Or Lauren from Lauren and the Books, I go, someday I will be as nice and as friendly and as loving. Simon, I go, I just want to be Simon. He is, his life and all the authors and stuff, and the way he presents stuff, love it. So it just has really taught me a bunch of different things that I can't even imagine my life without now. So thank you. Because let me tell you, BookTube would not be the same without all of you. That's really what makes this even more special, and the friendships and the comments and all that kind of stuff. This is a long video, and I hope I got all of your questions answered. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you are a new subscriber, this is a funny video to come in, but you know me now, so hopefully you will like my BookTube channel. And until next time, as always, happy reading. Oh, you know what? How did I leave her out? Vix over at, Vix, what is your book? The Bilingual Bookworm. She's my book soulmate, and I left her out because, you know what? I just think of her as part of my life now. I don't think about her as part of BookTube. She's just Vix, my friend. We talk. I adore her. I'm not leaving you out, Vix. There you are. So until next time, happy reading. Love y'all. Bye.